In the world of superheroes, there's always a fine line between salvation and destruction. We all know the drill. Heroes are supposed to be the light in the darkness, the saviors, the ones who rise when the world falls. But what happens when a hero reaches the end of that line? What happens when the very powers that once made them unstoppable begin to falter? When the methods they relied on their entire lives no longer work? This isn't just another story about a hero who saves the day. No, this is something deeper, something far more dangerous. Imagine a hero, let's call him the Vigilant, who has been through it all. He's fought through the worst of villains, taken down armies, saved countless lives, and yet with each victory, he feels himself slipping. The world around him is changing. Villains are evolving, enemies are becoming smarter, and his own strength, well, it's not what it used to be. You know the feeling, right? That sense of frustration, when no matter how hard you push, how much you fight, the world just keeps knocking you down. That's exactly what the Vigilant is facing. Now, here's the kicker. After one catastrophic battle, where the Vigilant barely survives, he finds himself at a crossroads. The pain, the exhaustion, the sense of impending failure, it's all too much. But then a mysterious figure appears, offering the solution, a power so ancient, so mystical, it could change everything. Magic. Real, true magic. Not the kind of flashy spells you've seen in movies or read in comics. No, this is something different. Something dark. Something potent. Something that promises to give him what he's been desperately seeking. But there's a catch. Magic, as you probably know, comes with a price. You can't just harness it without consequences. The more you use it, the more it consumes you. Every time you tap into that power, it erodes a little piece of who you are, turning you into something less human, less the hero you once were. This is the choice the Vigilant faces. Does he take this dark power, this life-saving, reality-altering magic, or does he let the world fall apart around him? It's the ultimate question. Will this magic save him or doom him? Now, I know you're probably asking yourself right now, what's he going to do? What's going to happen? Well, that's exactly what you're here to find out. But let me tell you this. What happens next isn't what you expect. The decisions the Vigilant faces aren't black and white. There are no easy answers. Every move he makes, every choice he contemplates, could lead him down a darker path. He might save the world, or he might destroy it. The moment he accepts that offer, he crosses a line. Magic is no longer just a tool. It's a living force inside him, something that reacts to his every thought, his every emotion. It's seductive, drawing him deeper into its depths. And the more he uses it, the more he finds himself changed. His thoughts become clouded. His sense of right and wrong begins to blur. He can feel his own humanity slipping away. And with it, the very thing that once made him a hero, his connection to the people he vowed to protect. But this isn't just about the Vigilant. This is a story about you too. It's about the choices you make when you're pushed to your limits. It's about the sacrifices you're willing to make to achieve something greater. We all have our breaking points. We all have that moment when the pressure gets too much, when we start looking for shortcuts, for ways to make everything easier. But those shortcuts come with consequences. Magic, power, control, these are all double-edged swords. They can give you everything you want and take everything you have. This is where the story gets interesting and why you're going to want to stick with me until the end. The Vigilant isn't the only one dealing with these forces. The world around him is beginning to change too. There are others who have been watching, waiting, and they see the cracks forming in the Vigilant's resolve. They see the magic coursing through his veins, and they know what it means. They're not going to just let him get away with it. There are those who want to control this magic for themselves, and others who want to stop it before it destroys everything. What they don't realize is that the Vigilant is slipping into something far more dangerous than any of them could have imagined. You're going to watch as this once indomitable hero falls from grace, as the magic takes hold of him in ways he can't even understand. But even as he begins to lose himself, something else starts to grow within him. A part of the hero he used to be, a part that still believes in good, in the idea of saving others, in being a light in the dark. But it's a battle now, a battle between the hero he was and the force of destruction he's becoming. It's a race against time to see whether he can pull himself back from the edge or if he's already too far gone. But here's the thing. You won't know the answer to that question for a while. And I'm going to keep you on the edge of your seat as I reveal what happens next. You think you know where the story is going, but trust me, you have no idea. The twists, the turns, the choices the Vigilant makes, it's all going to take you places you didn't expect. So, before I leave you hanging, let me ask you this. What would you do if you were in his shoes? Would you embrace the magic, risk everything for the power it promises? Or would you walk away and let the world crumble around you? We all like to think we make the right choice, but in the end, there's no clear path. The only certainty is that every decision will have consequences. The Vigilant's journey into the unknown is about to begin, and you're going to want to see how it plays out. But let me warn you, once you start this journey, there's no turning back. And just when you think you have it all figured out, just when you think you know what the Vigilant can do next, the rug is pulled out from under you. Magic, fate, and destiny are far more complex than you realize. The question you came here to answer will not be answered just yet. But don't worry, you're in for one hell of a ride. Stay with me, because the real adventure is just beginning. And just when you think you know where this is headed, that's when the real chaos begins as the Vigilant stood at the precipice of a decision that would change everything. The weight of the world seemed to press down on him. He wasn't just deciding whether to accept an offer for dark magic, a power so foreign and ancient it seemed unreal. No, this was about his identity, his very essence. Every moment he hesitated. He felt the pull of something deeper, darker, calling to him like a siren song. He had spent so many years as a protector, the one who stood above the chaos, the one people looked to when things fell apart. But now, in the silence of the moment, he realized just how alone he truly was. He had always been a symbol, an image in the eyes of the people. The Vigilant was untouchable, unstoppable. He had defeated villains who were supposed to be invincible. He had faced threats that others wouldn't dare to dream of. But behind every victory, every triumph, was a deep-seated fear, a fear he had buried so far beneath his armor that even he had stopped acknowledging it. What if it all ended? What if he couldn't keep going? What if the world needed something he could no longer give? The world had been changing for a while now, but the Vigilant had tried to ignore it. After all, how could a hero be afraid of the very thing he was supposed to protect against? But things were different now. The villains, once driven by simple greed or power, had evolved. They were no longer just criminals or maniacs. They were smart, calculating, unpredictable. They knew how to bend the system, how to get under the skin of the people, how to turn them against the very ones who were supposed to save them. And worse, they were using tactics that the Vigilant hadn't prepared for. Where once brute strength was enough, now strategy, manipulation, and control were the weapons of choice. It was during his latest encounter with an insidious enemy that the Vigilant realized just how much he had underestimated the changing tides. The battle had taken everything out of him. He had barely escaped with his life, only to watch as a city he had sworn to protect crumbled beneath the weight of corruption and fear. He had won the battle, but it had been a hollow victory. His strength had been stretched to its breaking point, and the cost had been far too high. For the first time in his career, he wasn't sure if he could continue. That's when the figure appeared, a shadow in the alleyway, an unknown voice that spoke with a calm, eerie certainty. "Magic can save you," the voice whispered, sending a chill down his spine. But at what cost? Magic. The word itself was enough to send a shiver through him. Magic wasn't something he ever thought he would need. He had always relied on his physical abilities, his training, his wit. Magic was for the weak, the desperate, the ones who couldn't hack it on their own. At least, that's what he had always believed. But now, in the face of his own weakness, he wasn't so sure. What if this was the answer? What if magic could give him the strength he needed to face the overwhelming forces against him? Could it be the answer he had been looking for all this time? As the Vigilant stood there, torn between the offer and the dangers it promised, he remembered the words of his mentor, a mentor who had taught him that the power of a hero lay not in their strength, but in their heart. Heroes didn't need magic to save the world. They just needed the will to do what was right. But what if the world was changing too quickly? What if doing the right thing wasn't enough anymore? He had seen it with his own eyes. The world was becoming darker, more chaotic. And no matter how hard he tried, no matter how much he fought, he couldn't stop it. He could feel the magic pulling at him, offering him everything he wanted. It whispered to him, showing him visions of a future where he was invincible, where nothing could touch him. It promised him control, power, the ability to protect those he loved without limits. But it also promised something else, something darker. The more he used the magic, the more he would lose himself. The very thing that made him a hero, the compassion, the sense of justice, the empathy for others, would slowly fade away. And in its place, something far more dangerous would take root. The vigilant was torn. Could he risk it? Could he risk everything for a chance at redemption? And if he did, would he be able to walk away before it consumed him entirely? Meanwhile, the world around him was crumbling. News outlets were covering the rise of a new breed of villain. These weren't the ones who simply wanted money or power. They were the ones who sought to dismantle the very fabric of society. They were planting seeds of discord, spreading misinformation, turning the people against each other. It wasn't just about crime anymore. It was about creating chaos, causing division, and watching the world burn. And behind it all was a shadowy organization, one that had been pulling the strings from the very beginning. The Vigilant had uncovered whispers of this organization during his investigation into the new villainous forces. They called themselves the Eclipse, a name that sent a chill down his spine. The Eclipse wasn't just a group of rogue criminals. They were a collective of powerful individuals, each with their own abilities that were not just physical but mental, magical even. Some of them had powers that defied logic, and they knew how to use them to manipulate entire cities. They were orchestrating the chaos, and no one knew how to stop them. They were the true enemy, the ones pulling the strings from the shadows. And the Vigilant knew that if he didn't act fast, they would tear everything he cared about apart. But even as he dug deeper into conspiracy, something strange began to happen. He started to notice things shifting around him. People who had once been his allies began acting strangely. His closest confidants seemed distant, distracted, almost as if they were hiding something. His trusted friends, the ones who'd been with him through every battle, now seemed unsure, fearful, almost as if they were turning their backs on him. And then there was the growing tension between him and the people he protected. The more he used the magic, the more the people began to pull away. They didn't know what had changed, but they could feel it. They could sense that he was no longer the hero they had once known. But what if it wasn't just a magic? What if there was something else going on, something far darker than even the Vigilant could imagine? There was a new player in town, someone who had appeared out of nowhere. He called himself the Phantom, a mysterious figure who had begun making waves in the criminal underworld. His motives were unclear, but his actions were undeniably powerful. He was unlike any villain the Vigilant had ever encountered. He didn't seem interested in money or power. Instead, he sought to dismantle the very system of power that the world had been built upon. He was spreading chaos, but in a way that felt more like an awakening than destruction. The Vigilant didn't know what to make of him, but one thing was clear. The Phantom was no ally, and if there was any chance of stopping the Eclipse, he would have to face this new threat as well. But as the tension mounted and the stakes grew higher, one question lingered in the Vigilant's mind. Could he save himself before the magic consumed him entirely? Could he stop the Eclipse, uncover the truth about the Phantom, and protect the world, all while holding on to the last shred of humanity that remained within him? The clock was ticking. The world was descending into chaos. And with every choice he made, the Vigilant was drawing closer to an irreversible decision. Would he rise to meet the challenge, or would he fall into the very darkness he had spent his life fighting against? The answers were out there, but finding them would come at a cost. And whether that cost would be worth it, only time would tell. The Vigilant had made his choice. He had crossed the line. Magic coursed through him now, transforming his body and mind in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. It was intoxicating. This newfound power, a deep well of dark energy that he could tap into with a mere thought. It surged within him like a living thing, pushing him to the edge of his sanity. He could feel it gnawing at his soul, eroding the very core of who he had been. The hero, the protector, was beginning to slip away, replaced by something more primal, something more dangerous. The magic promised to make him invincible, to give him everything he needed to defeat the eclipse, to end the chaos once and for all. But at what cost? Every time he used it, he could feel himself becoming less human, less the man he used to be. And deep down, somewhere beneath the weight of the magic, he feared that one day he would no longer recognize himself. But there was no turning back now. The world was falling apart, and the Vigilant had no choice but to press on. The eclipse had grown stronger, more organized, their influence spreading like a virus. They were no longer just a shadowy group pulling strings from behind the scenes. They had begun to infiltrate every level of society, from the highest echelons of government to the streets where the people fought for survival. The Vigilant had seen firsthand the way they manipulated the media, twisted public opinion, and turned the people against their supposed protectors. The more he learned, the more he realized how deeply the eclipse's influence had taken root. This was not just a battle for the future of the city. It was a war for the very soul of humanity. And if he failed, if he couldn't stop them, everything he had fought for would be destroyed. But even as he prepared to face this new threat, another danger was rising, one that he hadn't expected. The Phantom, a name whispered in dark corners of the criminal underworld, a name that sent chills down the spines of even the most hardened criminals. The Phantom wasn't just another villain. He wasn't driven by greed, by a thirst for power, or even by revenge. No, the Phantom had a different agenda altogether. He wanted to tear down the entire system, to destroy the very foundation of society itself. And he was doing it with terrifying precision. Each of his moves was calculated, each step taken with the kind of knowledge that made the Vigilant question if he had been a step behind all along. The Phantom had somehow predicted the Vigilant's every move, had known what he would do before he did it. It was as though the Phantom had access to some deeper understanding of the world, one that the Vigilant couldn't even begin to comprehend. And that terrified him. As the Vigilant struggled with his own internal battle, the world outside seemed to be unraveling faster than ever. The city was becoming a battleground, a place where no one was safe. The eclipse's grip on the population was tightening. People were being manipulated, controlled, turned into pawns in a game they didn't even understand. And in the middle of it all was the Vigilant, torn between his duty to protect the people and the dangerous magic that was slowly consuming him. He had always believed that he was the one who stood between the world and the darkness. But now, he would become the very thing he had sworn to fight against. He could feel it with every breath he took, every step he made. The darkness was seeping into him, changing him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The magic had already begun to affect the way he thought, the way he saw the world. His once clear sense of right and wrong had become clouded. The lines between hero and villain had blurred, and the Vigilant wasn't sure where he stood anymore. He had always believed that he was doing what was necessary to protect the people, but now he wondered, was he really the hero, or had he become just another part of the problem? Every time he used the magic, he felt himself slipping further away from the man he had once been. He could hear the whispers in his mind, urging him to use it more, to give in to its power. And each time he did, he felt a little more disconnected from the world he was trying to save. Meanwhile, the stakes continued to rise. The eclipse had taken things to a whole new level. They weren't just manipulating the media or the public. They were controlling the very people the Vigilant had trusted the most. His allies were turning against him one by one, their loyalties corrupted by the insidious reach of the eclipse. The people who had once fought by his side, who had believed in him, were now questioning his every move. They saw the changes in him, saw the way the magic was taking hold, and they feared what he was becoming. They were starting to wonder if he was a villain in this story, not the hero. And as the distance between him and his allies grew, so too did the threat from the Phantom. The Phantom wasn't just a threat to the Vigilant's physical safety. He was a threat to his very sense of self. The Phantom seemed to know everything about the Vigilant, every secret, every fear, every weakness. He was always one step ahead, manipulating events in ways the Vigilant couldn't even begin to understand. And worse, he was using the magic to manipulate people's minds, bending them to his will. The magic the Vigilant had embraced, the power he had thought would save him, was now being used against him by the Phantom in ways that twisted the very essence of what it meant to be a hero. But just as the Vigilant was beginning to lose hope, a new revelation came to light. The Phantom wasn't just a man, it was a collective, a network of individuals, each one a powerful force in their own right, using their own abilities to manipulate and control the world around them. It wasn't just one villain he was facing. It was an army of them, each with their own unique powers and motives, each playing a role in the grand plan to dismantle everything the Vigilant had fought for. And the worst part? He wasn't sure who was behind it all. The Phantom was just the face of the organization, but the true mastermind remained hidden, watching from the shadows, pulling the strings. The more the Vigilant dug into the mystery, the more he uncovered about the Eclipse and the Phantom. But the deeper he went, the more he realized that the answers he was seeking weren't going to come easily. The Phantom was always one step ahead, always anticipating his every move. It was as though the Phantom knew his thoughts, his fears, his weaknesses. And every time the Vigilant thought he was closing in on the truth, the Phantom would slip away, leaving him with more questions than answers. The people around him were starting to notice the changes, starting to see the darkness creeping into the Vigilant's soul. His former allies, the ones who had stood beside him for so long, were beginning to question his judgment. They saw the way he was starting to rely on the magic, the way it was changing him, and they feared what he might become. They could see that the once strong hero was becoming something else entirely. But the Vigilant didn't know if he could stop it. He had crossed a line, and now there was no going back. He was trapped in a cycle of power and destruction, one that he couldn't break free from. And as the stakes continued to rise, he had to face a terrifying truth. The magic might not be the answer. It might be the very thing that would destroy him and everyone he cared about. But just when the Vigilant thought he was out of options, something unexpected happened. A new ally appeared, someone who seemed to have information about the Phantom and the Eclipse. This mysterious figure, known only as the Oracle, had been watching the events unfold from the shadows, gathering knowledge and waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. The Oracle's knowledge of the Phantom was staggering. They knew things about him that no one else did, things that could potentially turn the tide in the Vigilant's favor. But the Oracle's motives were unclear. Could they be trusted? Or were they just another player in the game, another pawn in a much larger scheme? The Vigilant didn't know whether to embrace this new ally or distrust them. But one thing was certain. The stakes were higher than ever. The Phantom was closing in, and the Eclipse's grip on the world was tightening. The battle was far from over. And as the tension continued to mount, the Vigilant found himself facing an impossible choice. Trust the Oracle and risk everything, or face the Phantom and the Eclipse alone. The clock was ticking, and every second brought him closer to a decision that would change everything. Would he be able to stop the darkness from consuming him? Would he find the strength to defeat the Eclipse and the Phantom? Or would he fall into the very abyss he had fought so hard to avoid? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain. The Vigilant's journey was far from over, and the answers he sought were hidden in the very shadows that threatened to swallow him whole. The Vigilant stood at the precipice of the unknown. The Oracle had led him deep into the heart of the Eclipse's stronghold, a place hidden beneath layers of secrecy and shadow. The walls seemed to breathe, the air thick with tension. Every step he took, every move he made, felt like it was being watched, like the very fabric of the world around him was closing in. And yet, the deeper he ventured, the more he understood that this was a final confrontation. There was no turning back now. As the echoes of his footsteps reverberated off the cold stone, the Vigilant's mind raced. The magic that had empowered him, that had once felt like a gift, now felt like a curse. Every moment he spent in this place, every breath he took, the magic gnawed at his soul, pulling him further into darkness. The connection between him and the power that had transformed him was growing stronger, more dangerous. It wasn't just a tool anymore. It was a part of him. But as much as he hated what it was doing to him, he knew it was the only way to survive. Without it, he would never stand a chance against the Eclipse or the Phantom. Behind him, the Oracle moved in silence, a shadow in the darkness. The Oracle had become an enigma to him, a figure who seemed to know everything, yet revealed nothing. They had spoken in riddles, offering cryptic advice, never giving the Vigilant a straight answer. But now, as they stood together on the brink of a war that would shape the future, the Vigilant was beginning to question whether the Oracle's motives were as pure as they seemed. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" The Oracle's voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it cut through the stillness of the chamber like a knife. The Vigilant turned, meeting the Oracle's gaze. There was something in their eyes, something that made him uneasy, but he nodded. "I have no choice. I've come too far to stop now." The Oracle's lips twisted into a faint, knowing smile. "We all have a choice, but some choices come with a price." They stepped forward, deeper into the heart of the Eclipse's fortress. The air grew colder as they approached a massive door, adorned with symbols that seemed to writhe and shift as though alive. The Vigilant's heart hammered in his chest as he reached out to touch it, feeling the pulse of dark magic radiating from it. This was it. The final confrontation was upon them. The door swung open with a creak, revealing a vast, darkened hall. At the far end stood the Phantom, his silhouette framed by the flickering light of an ancient, fire-lit brazier. His figure was almost ethereal, a shadow among shadows, but his presence was unmistakable. He was waiting for them. "You finally made it." The Phantom's voice was calm, almost attached, but it sent a chill down the Vigilant's spine. "I've been watching you, waiting for this moment." The Vigilant stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You won't win. This end tonight." The Phantom chuckled, the sound echoing in the cavernous space. "You think you can stop me? You, who have already given in to the very thing you're fighting against. You're no hero, Vigilant. You're just a pawn in a much larger game." The word stung, but the Vigilant pushed him aside. He couldn't afford to be distracted. He had to focus. The Phantom was powerful, yes, but he was no match for the magic that now surged within him. With a flick of his wrist, the Phantom summoned a wave of darkness, a storm of pure malevolent energy that collided with the Vigilant. But the Vigilant was ready. He focused his energy, the magic inside him responding with a force that was almost beyond comprehension. He could feel it, the raw power, the pure strength, as it exploded outward in a blast of light and shadow. The two forces collided, the earth trembling beneath their feet. For a moment, everything was still. Then, the clash of their powers erupted in a brilliant flash of light, blinding and intense. The Vigilant felt his body snap back from the impact, but he was still standing. His was stronger than ever. The Phantom staggered, but he recovered quickly, his eyes glowing with an unearthly light. "You don't understand," the Phantom sneered. "You've been playing into our hands this whole time. The magic that you've embraced, it's not a gift. It's a weapon designed to destroy you, to destroy everything you care about." The Vigilant's heart skipped a beat. What was he saying? How could that be true? "You see, Vigilant," the Phantom continued, "you've been running from the truth. The magic was never meant to save you. It was meant to break you. You're not the hero. You never were. You were just a tool, a puppet in our game. And now you've sealed your fate. This is where it ends." The Vigilant's mind raced. The Phantom was trying to manipulate him, try and break his spirit, but there was a part of him that couldn't shake the words. What if he was right? What if the magic had never been his salvation, but his damnation? He shook his head, pushing the doubts aside. He couldn't afford to let them in now. The battle was far from over. With a roar, the Vigilant launched himself at the Phantom, summoning every ounce of magic he had left. The power surged through him, wild and untamed, as he crashed into Phantom. The two collided with a force that sent shockwaves through the room. The walls trembled, and the very foundations of the fortress seemed to groan under the strain. The Phantom's eyes narrowed, and with a flick of his hand, he conjured a blade of pure darkness, its edge shimmering with an ominous light. He swung it toward the Vigilant, but the Vigilant was faster. He twisted in midair, using the magic to deflect the strike, and with a final burst of energy, he unleashed everything he had left in a single devastating blow. The room was filled with a blinding light, and then silence. When the light faded, the Phantom was gone. The Vigilant stood alone in the center of the room, panting, his body battered and broken. He looked around, but there was no sign of the Oracle. The battle was over, but it had come at a great cost. For a long moment, the Vigilant stood there, trying to process what had just happened. He had won, but at what price? The magic that had once felt like a gift now felt like a curse. He had destroyed the Phantom, but in doing so, he had lost a part of himself. The Oracle had been right. The magic had never been his salvation. It had been his undoing. And now, with the Phantom gone, there was nothing left but the wreckage of his own soul. But even as the weight of the moment settled on him, he realized something. He had made it through. He had faced the darkness, both external and the one within, and he had emerged victorious. The city, the people, they were safe. For now. And that was enough. The Vigilant stood, looking out into the distance. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The world was still a dangerous place, filled with shadows and uncertainty. But as long as he was still standing, he would fight. He would continue to be the light in the darkness, no matter the cost. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of inner strength and resilience. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never forget your worth.